Welcome to the Boardroom Live experience. Rich Kleiman and Jay Williams here, frickin' frack. First off, I like the hat. It's not a John B look. I'm trying to think of a modern day artist that has the beanie hat look with the beard like that. It's tough though.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and it's good to be with you as well, buddy. But I'll tell you, the hat has more to do with the hair growth. Like I can show the beard off,
Hmm.
ball hair grows out, crazy. I haven't seen. I honestly haven't had this much hair on the top of my head since I was 18 years old.
Should we do the challenge like where you look down to show everybody what the hairline looks like?
I don't have a hairline.
Yeah. I'm not trying to show mine. I'm going to keep the chin up in the air. Hey, before we kick things off though, Rich, I would just like to take a second. I went to St. Joseph's High School in Metuchen, New Jersey, and the guy who was like my little big brother, Carl Anthony Towns, just found out he lost his mom today to coronavirus. So just want to send love and empathy his way to him and his family, Carl, Big Carl, his sister. Uh, Man, I can't. I know
No,
we've had people pass away, but just as far as the NBA family, it's been a tough months, man. Tough months.
yeah, yeah. Also, like you said, there's nothing really that can be said, but I also obviously am heartbroken to hear that. It's just it's just awful, man. I can't imagine the pain him and his family are going through, and during a time like this where you can't even mourn the appropriate and right way. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, man. Speaking of that though, I'm glad we were able to do that. It gets me to something that I saw the other day. Seton Hall, they did a poll at Hall Sports poll where they said 72% of sports fans polled say they wouldn't go to games if they were open before a vaccine was available. And Rich, I hear that, and it's just where my brain goes. With augmented reality, with virtual reality, obviously this is tough because unemployment's going up so much and the economy is struggling. But I just kind of feel like that has to be an avenue of generating some kind of revenue down the line that the NBA already has in place. I mean, I remember being at the conference with you a couple of years ago where they were talking about virtual reality. And if you're Adam Silver, if that's ticketing from the first row or if that's, even from the nosebleeds, you have to think about how do you reinvent or reimagine what that in-game experience is like, especially if you're going to be playing it without fans.
Yeah, I know. I saw that poll. I wasn't surprised, and I think I mean, I'll ask you: would you feel comfortable going to a sporting event? I mean, obviously not now, but even thinking 3, 4, or 5 months down the path, like there's still so many questions. So I would imagine that poll now is just a gauge on how people feel now, right? So
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised by it. I'll say that I think the league and all leagues were obviously already starting to implement AR and VR into their long-term planning and long-term thinking. I think this could speed it up for sure. I think
Hmm.
that this start to make people think a bit about other ways to bring home that like studio game, because that's what it's going to be with no fans. It's going to be a studio game. So how do you make that as desirable as it can be for the fan, and maybe there's different levels to what you offer the fan and down the road. But in the short term, I think it's just like it's one of those things, which is why when I was talking last week, did you see any of the interviews that I did last week? I think I sent you one of them
Yeah.
where I'm really was down on the conversation of the NBA returning, and not because I don't want the NBA to return as much as anybody, or baseball, or MLS, any sport, right? We're watching horse games, so like, trust me, I would love to watch any sport, but I just feel like it's really tough to gauge this one for the first time ever in our society, because sports has always been thought of as like the most kind of the most patriotic thing that you can put out there when something tragic happens in society, and after somebody passes, the idea of being at an arena with people that are all in this together. And it's like you think of sporting arenas as bipartisan, right? There's no like Democratic or Republican stadiums, and you just think of it as like a good vibe every time you're in an arena. But for the first time, there's this like invisible problem that no one has answers to. So when you think about a sporting event for the first time ever, it now thinks of it appears to be the scariest Whereas it used to be the kind of thing where you're like, well, I can't wait to be back in an arena or back in a stadium. Now it's like, well, I don't even know if I can be. And I do believe there'll be therapeutics that will give people a bit more of a confidence to even go out if that means that they may get sick still, right? If they haven't built up an immunity or before a vaccine. There'll be things that may lead to more
Well,
confidence.
here's a question, right? Like I told you, my daughter got sick back in December, and like that whole month, man, like I got sick. I caught the chills. We took her to the hospital 9 or 10 times, different doctor visits. They thought she had RSV. They thought she had back to back, bronchitis
Bronchial.
issues. Yeah, bronchitis. I just made that up. That's a dope word though. But I just like I'm like I don't know. Did I have it? I don't know if I had it. Like I haven't been able to get antibody testing, right? So like, can you come out with mass testing? But still, here's the question though: it's like if you are the league and you do find hypothetically you do find a way to get mass testing, what kind of look is that on any league that would give all their players mass testing to put on an athletic event while you have people out here who aren't able to receive testing and are dying, right? So
Yeah.
like, I don't even know how you weigh that as like, okay, here I have this business, I want to make it, I want to keep it going. Obviously, it's we employ so many people, but how do you balance that with what's happening in everyday life? Because you're going to be labeled that way. Like that's the legacy of Adam Silver and Roger Goodell and all these guys who have those big decisions in front of them.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, those are like, those are insanely tough decisions to make because I think even we all know how important that would be for morale for a country, but then you also just can't in any way guess A, whether it's safe yet, and then B, what are the ramifications and the pushback if you do bring it back too soon. And there's just so many different layers to it. There's so many economic ramifications, obviously health being the number one, but even when you get to these studio games, like there's still such a large amount of this of necessary people that have to be in an arena or a stadium, even for a studio game, just to put it onto TV. But listen, I do think that as quickly as things have happened in our country or the world, where it's like 3 months ago, we still could never have imagined any of this. Nobody could. So why not think that maybe 3 months ago there's a reverse to that,
Mm.
and that there's things that happen, and that we rely on science and we rely on rational thinking, and we start to adapt to new like societal changes, which will come. And that's what I think is so interesting is that like it's like movie theaters. Like I can't think movie theaters are dirty. Like they're dirty. You're
It's an
so close.
antiquated model, man. It's an antiquated model now. Like I don't know if that ever comes back.
Me either. That's what I'm saying. Now, sporting events will, but like, I was on a call with this guy, this economist. You know, everyone's doing these like Zoom calls where like people are calling in and learning. He said he doesn't think airline travel will ever be the same. Like, would you ever sit that close to someone in this condensed space like that with the airport? Like, if all like, there's so many things that we're going to see change that I just I wonder whether trying to fix something now or even thinking about fixing something now when the odds are so stacked against you as opposed to being so proactively planning the next season or proactively planning the fall when we do know enough from experts that there'll be some sense of whether it's an antibody test, whether it's new therapeutics, whether it's just a renewed confidence, right? Like, man, you go to the store. Do you know how quickly it happened? Whereas you go to the store and you don't want to touch anything, you don't want to walk by anyone. That happens so quickly.
Rich, I
So
walk down the street here in Brooklyn and I see somebody walking on the same pathway and I start to get mad. I'm like, yo, you see me walking with my kid? Like I go to the middle of the street or I go somewhere else. Like I also like I have a restaurant in the city. We've talked about this. I'm curious how it's affected some of your smaller businesses, right? Like we're still waiting for a PPE loan from the government, but like even like quick service restaurants, like we're sitting there, we have a small intimate restaurant. Like how do you do that again? How do
yeah,
you have one chef? How can you scale that? How many like I don't want to sit right next to somebody when I eat anymore. Like
well,
you give me 3 rows?
you got to put some. I've tried really hard during this whole period to put some kind of like rational perspective behind every way that we're thinking. You can get down this crazy thought process of like, it's just the end of the world. People really do think that way, right? Like people go nutso. I'm never going to be that kind of guy. But if you think about the idea that we happen to be in a generation where something new is happening, just like 100 years ago when the Spanish flu came about, that was brand new. And cities reacted in different ways. I've read up on it. Different people started kind of implementing new, started opening up their economy before other cities did. But ultimately, people weren't like, for the rest of time, we're not going to touch each other or say hello or talk. So I do think that like some of these habits and patterns will start to kind of like use like reason. Like, okay, I went to the store 25 times. I didn't have gloves. Nothing happened. Oh, there is a therapy that works. Cases are starting to be reported on much broader levels. So as horrible as all this is, you're starting to see the fatality rate be lower and lower and lower. And we're going to have to start using real rational thinking and confidence in the decision we make. It's like, okay, let's be a little bit more cautious of who we're next to. Maybe we use a mask in the short term. Always wash your hands now. Like that's something that I don't think will ever change. Like incessant hand washing, right? Things like that. But I do think there'll be a slow ripple effect of us starting to find some balance between like the old normal, which by the way, did any of us even really like the old normal? And then the new normal, which is trying to figure out like, what is the healthy way about returning to the world and not living in fear? I don't know. But
It's like a lot of questions though, Rich. Like when we are able to return to what our new normal will be, what things from our original normal won't be there anymore. Like XFL
yeah,
had to file Chapter 11 the other day, right? Like that
well,
was a league that
that was not the old normal though.
I know, but that was a league that you and I were talking about. We were talking about how are we going to do content around XFL. Like it's fresh. They had changed the rules. Like it felt like maybe their ratings weren't as great, but I did like the dynamic of how they thought. Like
Yeah,
changing the game of football. Like that's different. Like there are a lot of smaller leagues like Wimbledon. They have pandemic insurance. Like what
yeah.
most events don't have. They made 141 million, but it's just this new way of thinking now that you have to go into with everything you do. Like I wonder, like what's the I know how it's changed my mind as I look at different opportunities. Like has it like how has it sat with you? Like when you obviously crazy things are going on right now, and but there's also a new way of seeing things. Anybody you've spoken to that kind of gives you insight on, hey, I see this vertical operating this way, and where does your brain go? Like, are you trying to accomplish new things or the new verticals you're trying to attack?
Well, no, but again, I mean, no, I think not. This doesn't relate to me, but I was listening to this guy speak and talking about the state of the economy, and to look at like, if someone asked him if you were to invest now in the market, what would you invest in during this time? And obviously, like that has all to do with your individual situation, and depending on what your balance sheet looks like and what your cash at hand and your liquid is like, but companies that have incredible leadership, companies that have a core business that will sustain, that is not going to change, that has a business model that will sustain, and companies that have a lot of money at hand are companies that I think Microsoft, companies like this that obviously will see themselves through this. An interesting company I just read about though is in reading about Disney. I think I forwarded you the article. Disney again. Obviously, I
No,
think
you
this is
didn't. You never forward me any articles, bro. Nah, come on, man.
man. I've been like reading so much and forwarding like arbitrarily to certain people. Some people ignore everything I send. Katie doesn't respond to any article. Then I have like a group of people that like read all my articles and want more, but then they want to talk. I don't really want to talk. I just wanted to send the article. But I was reading about Disney and how Bob Iger's had to step in a bit more
Yep.
in terms of transitioning out from that role, but feeling somewhat of an obligation because of the kind of person he is to stay very much heavily involved in every step of this. But so the Disney app is doing incredibly well, and the Disney brands are evergreen, but they have no new content they're creating now. The cruise ship business and the amusement park business have halted.
Yep.
So then they talk about like temperature testing when you walk into an amusement park. But again, that goes back to like the confidence thing. How confident do you want to feel going into an amusement park knowing that people are taking your temperature beforehand. Some of these things I think either may not return or maybe are just things that may wait until a vaccine is presented.
But it's also fascinating, Rich, because the tonality of how you, even if you are a company, like, one of my friends is the CEO of Campbell Soup, and I watch him all the time because obviously, canned soup has become like it skyrocketed all of a sudden. And he's so judicious with the tonality he uses when talking about it because I've seen him on CNBC and be like, well, obviously your company's exploding. And he's like, well, we're just trying to give needs to everyday consumers. Like it makes you like anything that you do business now, like there has to be such a sensitive tone towards it. Like you have to think through
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
before you say it. Like we were even talking on Jalen Ramsey on our podcast, and he's like, "Yo, like I want to get as a free agent, I want to get what I'm owed." Right. And Durant James, like, oh, you're owed 100 million. But Jalen's like, I'm not going to say that. I don't know if I could say that during today's temperature and climate, but that's what I want.
Yeah.
It's challenging to see how you navigate that.
No, that's real because even as like a business, for us, we a major part of our business is creating content, um, creating stories, and bringing them to other platforms to partner with us to put out. And even that, like every call you make now, you have to like preface by saying like, look, I understand if you're not doing anything right now. I'm not trying to be greedy. You gotta you think about all that, and that's what I mean by like all these just like subtle societal changes that are happening. But I do think that the resiliency and the idea that like in our lifetime, though this is unprecedented, everything for the most part we always seem to pass right through and deal with. This isn't that. Way
Agreed.
too many lives lost, life changing, but I don't give up on everything that like happened before. I just like when it comes to sports, man, it's like on one hand, I'm desperate to watch sports. I've been watching classic. I watched the Giants Patriots Super Bowl yesterday, like I was watching the Giants Patriots Super Bowl for the first time. I mean, with that same level of excitement. And it's like, of course, we all want sports, but then it's like you find yourself having that conversation, like you just said about Jalen Ramsey. You're like, how though? Like, what do you even? How are we going to do that? Like, but maybe we're also, you and I are in New York. You know what I'm saying? So like when you're in New York right now, your perspective of it is straight wartime, and I know everyone in the world sees what's happening in New York, but unless you're in New York, and even I'm able to get out of the city, you're still in the city. That's different. When you see that, you're like, how? Like, how could you ever? How could any of this happen?
I'll tell you, man, I'm getting a little bit confused, without saying media networks, but there was one really successful known media network that I guess didn't properly vet a story and it got posted. And, I saw Donald Trump post fake news and it was actually, I bet it was fake news. And it's like, so as I'm saying, with so much, what'd you say?
What story was that?
It was about a nurse in a hospital, and the nurse was giving this account of they didn't have enough PPE, and that the environment was wrong within the hospital, and a lot of people were walking around the hallways without masks, and she felt uncomfortable and she had to quit her job. And then the third party did a vetting on her background, found out she didn't work at the hospital for a year. She had suffered from being bipolar disorder, and anyway, like it just goes back into like content comes out so fast and so much is being politicized too on a lot of different angles. It makes you confused about, like my mom had to go into the hospital in North Carolina. She's like, there's not a lot of people here who have COVID-19 here. And they said it's okay for me to come in. And
it's just, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and being here is so dense and it becomes such a thing. But I will say this, it is interesting to watch. Like you talk about you watching the Super Bowl between the Giants and the Patriots. Like I've been watching a lot of e-gaming. If it was ESPN, we did the horse challenge, the NBA 2K tournament, which we got to talk to Kev about losing in the first round. We'll say that for another conversation. But like, do you see this thing that happened with NASCAR? They've been kind of pivoting towards e-gaming and having a lot of their drivers participate in the e-gaming experience. You had a guy named Kyle Larson that actually didn't know he was being streamed live, and he actually said the N-word, which isn't necessarily reflecting well on NASCAR right now. But like, how do you navigate that as a business, right? Just new territory, people not knowing when they're on, when they're not on. It's just a whole new dynamic. that because
Yeah,
we're
well,
yearning for content, we're yearning to see something. But now you put your talent in positions that maybe aren't as conducive to them being successful. I'm not, saying I'm not defending at all. He was crazy wrong for ever using that terminology, and I don't think his brand will ever recover from that. But still, it's like you're putting people in weird scenarios that they haven't really been in before.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't have. I feel you, but like, I don't have sympathy for that. That's just like ignorant, for
No, I,
someone.
I hear. I don't have sympathy for either. I'm just saying.
Beyond what he said, being ignorant, like you're ignorant if you can't figure out that you're on air and like whatever. But I will say to what you said about NASCAR trying to like how they're trying to figure out if they're going to go into e-gaming and what you're doing in terms of your free time at ESPN, and you see the horse challenge. What are you doing? Like, what is ESPN? What's your schedule like right now with ESPN?
It changes all the time, man. It's some days I could be on 7 shows, depending on if we do NBA Countdown. That we do YouTube versions about what hot topics are out there. You also manufacture content. We're having the Jordan documentary. Well, you think about, manufactured content it's like, how do you provide an experience for fans based
Created
on,
create a debate kind of thing.
yeah, like, who would have won an MVP, or what chances we have given the Bucks to win, or, it also could be a little bit frustrating because you're a lot of future projections. Like, was this LeBron's best chance to win it? Like, I'm like, I don't know what will happen next year, what moves Rob Pelinka will make, or things of that sort. So it is the cool part though about what I love that we do is that talking to athletes, it's a way for me to keep accumulating knowledge. Like that conversation we had with CJ McCollum, hearing some of the new business ventures he's looking at and where he thinks the NBA is going to go. Also, what's happening right now with the NBA's relationship with China, and we feel like it was in a weird place before with Daryl Morey and his comment. But now, how is it in a place, being politicized and the China virus? And so, like, hearing athletes' perspectives on that and has been really cool on our part because, in a way, we almost become a news generator for
Yeah,
ESPN. And it helps our
yeah,
relationship with them in a way because we have a value add that we bring to the table.
yeah. Well, I think it's sometimes when I hear ESPN, I think it's like during the season you can get really tired of the debates and the rankings of the top five and who's better than who's better. But what I'm realizing during this break from live sports right now,
Gives you,
when I
yeah,
yeah, like all
yeah,
of a sudden I'm down to watch it because like that's how much we love sports. That we'll literally listen to the same combo, or the same perspectives, but we just can consume so much sport, and it's like endless. And I actually really like it's been refreshing to watch some of those shows without games to talk about because they are getting to these more like holistic conversations. It made me wonder. I tweeted the other day. I'm trying to find my Twitter voice, man. Do you follow me on Twitter?
yes, Rich, I follow you on Twitter.
It's getting better, right?
Hey, look, dude, can I tell you something? Real talk. You came. I mean, in the couple years that we've known each other, you are a different man right now. You are a different man.
I'm locked in on Twitter. My Instagram game is weak. I don't know how to have like a. I might be too old to have like a charismatic voice on IG, but my Twitter game is stepping up. I'll say though, I asked like, what do I think is better to watch, old NFL games or old NBA games? What do you think?
I've always been a fan of football, but I don't know, man. The storylines from basketball are just like, I'm a basketball
Yeah,
crazy.
I think a board old NBA is more exciting because you could just watch like a random old NBA game. But if you watch a classic football game, maybe it's just biased because I watched a Giant game yesterday. But that's pretty. I mean, I was watching that Giants. Oh my god, I could talk about it all day, man. I could just literally talk about the Giants Super Bowls all day. What's your go-to like YouTube players? Who are your guys that you go to?
Well, we did a session on Countdown the other day, which is I love '90s. I love the '90s, and it goes back to like we showed Sean Kemp where he cuffed the ball on the guy, right? Talked about I think it was Denver and Portland, where Denver was like the first 8 seed to beat a 1 seed. We showed some old AI clips. It's kind of like which I think sometimes taking the time to pause and actually look back on how we got to this point because we're always so future forward thinking about what's now. And I always feel like we're in a time keeping up with the Joneses. We always want to be a step of the Joneses, the way you and I think, but to have a moment to actually look back on how the game was and how physical the game was, and how dudes would lead games with bloody eyes, and there would be no fouls called.
I saw Rex Chapman post the 80s, like some like clips from the 80s and 90s. It was like straight assault.
Yes.
I mean, for the Larry Bird, Bill Laimbeer, Robert Parrish, Charles Barkley, like those Sixers, Celtic, Pistons, like in the Eastern Conference was straight like UFC fighting. It was crazy. Then you go into like the early 90s Knicks, Bulls, Pacers, Heat, brawls.
Yeah.
Crazy, man.
Crazy, man.
Knicks Suns. You remember the game Knicks Suns? Greg Anthony was in street clothes and he got into it. His shirt got ripped out.
Yes.
Crazy, man.
GA. Shout out to Cole Anthony too. He's the next one, hopefully on the draft board. All right. Well, this has been the Boardroom Live session. Rich, you and I get back together soon in time, and stay safe.
We got to, it's conversation. These conversations make the time fly by, man, and that's why I'm excited about all the stuff we've been doing too. Because it's cool to just to hear other people, like just to listen. You know what I'm saying, and hear other people's like view on what's going on right now in the world. Because like, it's tragic to hear about everything that's happening, but a lot of blessings come out of dark times. I guess that's the way I look at it. I'm trying to find those. So it's been fun, bro.
I'm with you, brother. Stay safe out there, man. I'll call you later.
All right, wait till you see my beard.
I'm see it.
All right, bro. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Later.